Hey friends, it's Mal. Welcome back to my YouTube channel if you're watching, and welcome back to the Witch Church podcast if you're listening. It's been a second since I did a little rising sign forecast video / podcast, and I was actually waiting for Venus to station retrograde. So in this moment, Venus is now stationed retrograde. It is July 25th, 2023. Venus stationed just a few days ago. And an important part of every Venus retrograde is when Venus conjuncts the sun very closely. And the vocab word for the very tight conjunction to the sun is Cazimi. So I wanted to talk about Venus's Cazimi in Leo and how this might be affecting your chart. And keep in mind, the Venus Cazimi points aren't just a one-time thing. They're they're always cycling in a certain pattern, right? So Venus has been Cazimi in Leo before. And specifically, we can look back to 2015 and 2019. Looking at my notes here. We can look back to August 15th, 2015. Venus was Cazimi in Leo at 22 degrees Leo. And August 12th, 2019, Venus was Cazimi at 19 degrees Leo. And now, coming up in just a couple weeks, August 13th, 2023, Venus will conjoin the sun at 20 degrees Leo. Okay. So this is interesting because, we could take the Venus Cazimi pattern in Leo back even further. But just even since 2015, we can think back to end of the summer 2015, end of the summer 2019, end of this summer 2023. I'm thinking there's something that's sort of presenting itself as a story, a sort of developmental arc in our Leo house. And let's talk a little bit about the signification of Venus conjunct the sun in general. Now, some of you may know, most of you may know if you're a regular listener, but if you're new to my YouTube channel, I'm mainly a Hellenistic astrologer. I actually started studying with a modern astrologer. My very first astrology teacher was a modern psychological astrologer, and then at some point in my journey I sort of hopped over to the Hellenistic side of things. So I tend to look at astrology through a Hellenistic lens. A lot of people think that Hellenistic astrology is sort of very heavily predictive and void of any psychological significance, but it's absolutely a false belief. The Hellenistic astrologers, I think, were deeply psychological in the way that they looked at things, and they really believed that God and the universe was working through the planets, and that God was a manifestation of themselves within these different planets, right? So they actually had a quite spiritual, religious way of looking at astrology. But I'm off on a little bit of a tangent, but the reason I started on that was because it was a Hellenistic concept. One of the old guys, I think it was Retrograde, was the one who came up with the concept of a Cazimi, which again is a planet very, very, very tightly conjunct the sun. Like, we're talking like within a degree. Some astrologers will even take that to an extreme and say the planet is only Cazimi if it's within 15 minutes of the sun, so we could get like super, super specific and tight with this moment. But what this moment really signifies on a more symbolic level is sort of a rebirth for Venus, if you will. There's a little bit of like almost like a purifying a purifying force. Imagine if like a planet is going through a car wash. That's kind of like a Cazimi in a weird way, only instead of like water and soap, it's sunlight. It's the rays of the sun. So it's almost like this car wash of light that is purifying the planet. And we have to keep in mind, though, that according to the Hellenistic astrologers, the planet that is approaching this very tight conjunction with the sun, although the Cazimi point, right, the tightest conjunction with the sun, is a very powerful, purifying kind of moment for the planet. The sort of approach to that Cazimi point, we would call it the combustion. We consider this planet sort of burning up under the sun's rays. So we might notice some shadow themes early August in our Leo houses as Venus approaches the Cazimi, because until Venus reaches the Cazimi point, she is combust. So again, there's a little bit more of a shadowy manifestation of Venus's message. Although I will say, if we're abiding by sort of the Hellenistic rules of astrology, right now Venus in Leo is answering to Sun in Leo, right? Obviously, because they're going to meet in Leo. But Leo, the Sun in Leo is the Sun in its domicile. It's the Sun in its favorite, most powerful sign. So I'm kind of getting there's some sort of remediation, or maybe remediation isn't quite the correct word, but there's some kind of medicine for Venus and Leo, because they are answering to such a powerful sun, right? Now, if the sun was like in Aquarius or something, because that's the detriment or the fall of the sun. Don't ask me which one it is. It's been a second, guys. It's been a second since I've reviewed my Hellenistic terminology. But yeah, let's say the sun's in Aquarius. The sun can be pretty weak in Aquarius, right? The sun can't get everything that it needs to get done in Aquarius. So if we had a Venus Cazimi in Aquarius, then I think we're feeling the Venus combustion so much more in a different, perhaps even more challenging way than a Venus combustion in Leo. Not saying there's going to be no challenges. I think we'll still be facing something going on in our Leo house, which is exactly what we'll be discussing today in today's video. But I just thought I'd give that little overview of this symbolism behind a Venus combustion and a Venus Cazimi. Now, let's talk about specifically Venus Cazimi in Leo, because like I said, this is like a particularly strong Cazimi point because it's happening in the sun's domicile. And I'm thinking about how Venus implies something about how we reach for harmony, how we harmonize with other people, the outside world, the material world, how we relate to one another, how we relate to our lover, our mother, our money, our possessions, like that. Those things very much relate to Venus. So Venus in Leo, like how does Leo approach harmony? I think there's kind of a weird sort of double-edged sword in there, because Leo teaches us you can't have harmony with others unless you are first and foremost harmonized with yourself. And until you are in harmony with what your true desires are, and until you're in harmony with your true voice and your spirit and the expression of your own talents, then you actually can't be in harmony with other people. And other people won't be able to see the real you. So there's something here about Venus and Leo. Are we really trying to harmonize with other people, or is it actually more of a lesson of harmonizing with the many facets of our own selves? And even as a creative, as a writer, you know, as a creative business owner, there have been times where I feel like I have to get in harmony with a creation, or get in harmony with the production of you know, a story I'm writing. Or if you're an artist, it could be like a painting you're painting, or if you're an actor, it could be a musical that you're performing in or whatnot. So I think the Leo archetype, relating back to our sacred uniqueness, like we're all our own pretty little individualized snowflakes, you know. Like that makes me think, ooh, this Cazimi is going to fundamentally, whatever house it's taking place for you in, whatever house is Leo for you, fundamentally there's this underlying thing, there's this underlying theme of, are you right with yourself? And you can't actually get right with the world or get right with other people unless you're right with yourself. And I think it's funny because I've mentioned this before on different podcasts, but I recently went through a really big phase of watching couples therapy on Showtime. At least that's where you can watch it in the States. I'm not sure what channel it's on in other countries, but it was so good. And I like how TikTok has recently popularized couples therapy, which is basically a reality show of couples going to therapy together. And it's incredibly, incredibly powerful, especially if you are sort of a survivor of attachment trauma and you find yourself bringing your own attachment trauma into your interpersonal relationships. I personally found it to be an extremely powerful watch. But regardless, this show was very Venus Cazimi in Leo, where we would watch these couples kind of be in a place of, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, and like going back and forth, back and forth. But then as the layers of the onion peel back, we suddenly find two people that are not right with with their own selves, and because they're maybe ignoring something about themselves or not telling the truth of themselves to themselves, there's this big creation of conflict or drama in relationships. And I don't think this is something we can escape, because this is like the double-edged sword, I guess, of the Venus Leo Cazimi, because Leo's all about who are you in relation with yourself, but Venus is all about who are you in relation to others. So there's something here about, we can't actually find our truest self without the reflection of others at the same time. Like it's interesting because at the end of the couples therapy show, I mean, I watched all 3 seasons. It feels like every single person found a piece of their truth in the mirror of the other person. And that can kind of be a Venus Cazimi moment. Like, how can others play a part in our own sacred mirror? And if we were just meditating our whole life in a silent ashram and only talking with ourselves and our own thoughts, would we actually ever truly get to the truth of ourselves, or will we always, I don't know, or will we always be missing something because we're not actually in relationship with others, right? So yeah, that's kind of my overview. Those are my intuitive messages with Venus, Cazimi, and Leo in general. And I definitely want to take us into the rising sign forecast. So let's do this, my friends. Again, because I'm viewing things from a Hellenistic perspective, I'm going to refer to the whole sign system, your whole sign system, rising sign house. Even if you do use Placidus or another quadrant-based house system, that's totally fine. You can do your thing. You can listen for your whole house interpretation and your quadrant house system interpretation, whatever floats your goat. But I would recommend listening for the rising sign specifically, because again, the rising sign will tell us which area of your life the Cazimi is happening within, and that will give you some more clarity of how to maybe frame this Cazimi point. Okay, and again, so also be thinking about August 15th, 2015 and August 12th, 2019. Think about those two time periods and maybe how they could be reflecting something right now at the same time, because again, the upcoming Venus Cazimi will perfect August 13th, 2023, 20 degrees Leo, and that's going to happen around 7 a.m. Central Time. Okay. How are we feeling? Should we dive in? I think we should dive in, and please send prayers that my roommate's dog continues to stay quiet. Knock on wood. Okay. Send her a prayer. Send her Reiki. All right. Let's start with Leo Rising. You're the star of the show, Leo Rising, because this Venus retrograde is working its way through your first house of the self, first house of the physical body. So Venus is sort of purifying themselves at this Cazimi point on August 13th in the first house. So I would think that the Leo risings are really considering a great reclamation of their own path. I think there might be some big realizations that have been had or are still coming when it has to do with how Leo risings may have given up their agency, their personal agency, to outside forces. And this can look like a lot of things. Like, it reminds me that one time, I think it was the New York Times did a study on people who go to medical school. And I'm not necessarily like talking smack about people who go to medical school, so just putting out that disclaimer. But they did a study on, medical school students, and most of them said that their motivating factor behind becoming a doctor was something like their parents wanted them to do, right? So there's something there about like sort of giving up one's agency to choose one's path in order to choose the path that was put before you, or in order to choose the path that is the most appealing to your parents or society. And I could see this Venus Cazimi point for Leo risings being a little bit of a reclamation of the path itself, and asking oneself, what do you truly want, and what would you say yes to if you weren't scared that others were going to judge you? And also, what would you say yes to if let's say like your parents' judgment didn't actually matter all that much. It's hard because sometimes we're born into a lifetime where our parents or our caretakers really don't get us. And sometimes we have to be careful of how much we digest their opinion of what we're doing, because there's a very biased view sometimes that parents can have on us, this idea of I know what's best for you, or whatever. You know what's best for you. So there's something there as well with the Leo risings, like reclaiming that fundamental belief that you know what's best for you, and you can see your path more clearly than anybody else. Okay, and yeah, maybe there's some Leo risings here who have great parents and are feeling a lot of support from their parents at this moment. So that doesn't have to resonate with everyone per se, but just as an example of how we go through moments where we may have to reclaim our path. I have a Leo rising friend who is currently currently experimenting with a job change, a career change, and the career that they have right now is very much the path that was laid out for them by their parents, by society, by their professor. And the path that they are exploring is very much a wild card moment that their parents do not like. I believe they told me my parents hate what I'm thinking about doing instead. So yeah, it's a good moment for them, right? It's a good moment for them to reclaim their path and do what they truly want to do. Another Leo rising that I work with is moving. They're moving back to their hometown. They feel really happy about it. They told me that they have slept better in the past, 2 months of making the decision to move back to their hometown than they have in like years. So I think that's a sign, like the Leo risings are making really important life-changing decisions right now that may be affecting their career as well, because we've got that square from Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus in the 10th house, right? So yeah, there's career changes in the background of this life path reclamation, but it's all good, right? So yeah. I'm excited for you, Leo risings. Don't be afraid to sort of go up against what the path that has been laid out before you in order to find what it is that feels right. That's my guidance for the Leo risings. Okay. Virgo rising. You are having the Cazimi in the 12th house, as well as the Venus retrograde in the 12th house, right? So what does that mean in English? Sorry if you see me looking down, it's just I'm looking at my laptop / notes so I can get the full vision. I'm a double Pisces, so for me to channel something, sometimes I need to be looking at the chart. Yeah, so Virgo risings, the Venus Cazimi happening in the 12th house. It's funny, I know a Virgo rising through the grapevine who recently decided they really want to go on a peyote journey. I don't think I'm saying that right, but like a plant medicine journey, which feels to me really 12th housey. Venus Cazimi in the 12th house, the 12th house being the area of the subconscious, the area of the mind that we tend to hide from, right? It's funny how we can sometimes, for survival reasons, the mind represses things and hides things, and but yet those things unconsciously drive us, right? So there's something here with that person I know through the grapevine wanting to do a plant medicine ceremony, and being a Virgo rising, there's something there like, I'm ready to uncover what I've been hiding from, or I'm ready to tap into sort of other subconscious or unconscious parts of who I am. Now, disclaimer, again, this isn't me telling the Virgo risings to like all go to Peru and do ayahuasca or something like that. I mean, take this story with a grain of salt, but do you see the metaphor there? Like, if it's not plant medicine, maybe some Virgo risings are trying a new type of therapy, or maybe some Virgo risings are going on a retreat. The 12th house rules over sort of retreat spaces, and those spaces where we can be alone, kind of like Thoreau's cabin in the woods, or Virginia Woolf's writing shed. Like, that's a very 12th house place. Like, the places that allow us to be with the soul, be with ourselves, be with our deepest psychological motivations, and figure shit out for ourselves. So this could be a very life-changing moment for a lot of the Virgo risings, because there's some truth that's coming to the surface for the Virgo risings, and that truth is coming from like the depth of our psyches. It almost reminds me of the Sun card in the tarot, which is kind of like a big illumination of something. So I think the Virgo risings, there's an illumination of why I've been behaving this way, or why I don't feel I'm deserving of love or abundance, or why I don't completely feel worthy, or whatever it is. There's something there that really comes through. And this adds up too, because Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus are in the 9th house of God and the belief systems and all of that jazz. So there's something there about the inherent spirituality of this moment. One of my astrology teachers, Adam Ellenboss, one time he said in class, or I don't know if it's a video, or he makes so much content, I have no idea how he does it. But clearly, since I make one video a quarter, but he said something like, when the astrology is kind of choppy waters, he doubles down on his relationship with God, or like he doubles down on his practices or his spiritual practices. And I find that very enlightening, or very empowering, and it's something that I've thought about during this Venus retrograde. I've been praying a lot more. I've been, asking God or the universe, or however you want to frame the force. I've been writing down prayers a lot. I've been asking the universe to help lift me away from despair and impatience, and help me find compassion, and help me find fun along the way, and don't let despair make me miss the joy of these moments too. So that's something too that Virgo risings may want to consider, like how to double down on the spiritual practice as a support system, because big 12th house stuff isn't easy, especially retrograde with the 12th house. I mean, I'm a Cancer rising, so that Mars in Gemini retrograde at the end of 2022, that went through my 12th house, and that was like let's not talk about it. I'm like still processing that in a lot of ways. But what I will say is, a retrograde through the 12th house, doesn't matter the planet, it typically will help us overcome some kind of fear. So that's the good part, Virgo rising. Okay. Libra rising. Interesting, Libra rising, you're ruled by Venus, right? So, and the South Node just moved into the 1st house for you, Libra rising. So that's kind of an interesting timing thing for you, but this Venus retrograde / Venus Cazimi is happening in the 11th house of friends, groups, and networks. So, you know, I'm thinking some of you may be going through a change or have gone through a recent change that is immersing you in a new social circle. It's immersing you in a new social situation. So I know a Libra rising through the grapevine who's starting grad school this fall. Okay, so that's a new social circle, right? I know a Libra rising who's moving literally across the country in the next 2 months. New social circle. I also know a Libra rising who is struggling with their friendship stuff right now, I think. And maybe when old friends leave, new friends come in, but sometimes in that new friend stage, you don't exactly know if you can trust these people or not, or if these people have your best interest at heart. So there could be something a little shadowy here going on in the 11th house for Libra risings when it comes to friendships. It's like, who really is my friend? Or what friends are worth working through the challenges with, and what friends were just there for a period of time, you know, and there's like this dumb Pinterest quote or something that's like, some people are here for a season and some people are here for a lifetime. And I feel that's sort of a weird way that Venus Cazimi in the 11th house for Libra risings, like, who's here for a season, who's here for a lifetime. I think some Libra risings could be having realizations about how they've outgrown certain people in their social circles. They could be having, again, new people in their social circles popping up. Maybe there's also a new friend or an old friend that's taking a new form. So I could imagine some Libra risings, maybe there's a friend that's turning into a lover, or you know, a friend who you're now have a platonic partnership with, and you're buying a house with them, or you're moving in with them, or something along those lines. Like, there's something powerful going on when it comes to our connections for Libra risings, but who's to say if that has to do with bringing people together, or also recognizing that there are certain people who are leaving your life at this moment because they're no longer meant to be in your life, or the karmic contract or the relationship has been finished. You know, like the karma has been finished between you two, so now you both are moving on. The reason I say that is because the square from Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus is coming from the 8th house, and the 8th house can be resolutions, forgiveness, endings, karma sort of burning up and sort of leading us into a new cycle. So yeah, there might be a realization like, oh wow, like, I love that person. I look back at our friendship or our connection with a lot of esteem or regard, and at the same time I recognize we're two different people now, and we're evolving in different ways. And it doesn't mean I won't always love them, but it does mean that in order to stay in connection with them, I would have to shift back into an old version of myself, and that old version of myself is no longer who I am, right? And we never want to surround ourselves with people who require us to be a false version of who we are, okay? So something just came through about like a story of like, let's say someone's getting sober. Let's say a Libra rising is getting sober, and because of that, their friend group is like drastically changing, and they're realizing like, oh, like I had a lot of friendships that were based just off of partying, or I had a lot of drinking buddies, but when it came to genuine friendships, I'm realizing now that I'm in my sober journey that I need to work on that. And now there are drinking buddies that no longer have a place in my life or whatever. Just an example. It doesn't have to apply to every Libra rising, but you're picking up what I'm putting down. Okay. Alrighty. Scorpio rising, 10th house. 10th house, career, personal authority, relationship to authority, our bosses, our parents, the king. Yeah, I almost wonder, like, I think this could be true for both Taurus and Scorpio risings, but I wonder if some Scorpio risings, you know, it could be something as drastic as like my boss quit, or my boss died, or my boss is taking a leave of absence, and now I'm having to step up to the plate in this way that I didn't expect. Or, you know, there's something here about the story of the Cazimi in the 10th house of public reputation. People are seeing you in a different way. And especially for the Scorpio risings, again, look back at August 2015, August 2019, and now this August. What was happening in August 2015 and 2019 in regards to your career path or your reputation at work? Certainly some Scorpio risings could be changing career paths. That's completely valid, a valid interpretation, I would say, if I'm judging my own interpretation. Some Scorpio risings are going through a special training at work in order to increase their skill set. Some Scorpio risings may be being sponsored by their workplace to go get a degree, a master's degree, or go get a special training or something along those lines. Now, because of the square with Jupiter and Uranus, there's something coming in the 7th house too, the 7th house being the house of relationships and partnerships. I wonder if your newfound success in the workplace, or this new promotion in the workplace, or this new realization of like, aha, like now I'm manager, or now I'm the CEO, or now I'm gonna have a master's degree. Like, for some reason it's influencing your relationship life in some way. Like, maybe because now you have an increased salary, your partner doesn't have to work their job, or, you know, it could be a whole bunch of things. Yeah, so it's like this career change, or this change of how people see you. It's influencing your innermost relationships too, not necessarily in a bad way, but just the way you're being perceived in the public is also influencing how you're showing up in the private, with your private relationships as well. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Sag rising, this is cool. We've got a Cazimi in the 9th house. So it's just like for Sag risings, what a beautiful time. Like, I think the Sag risings are, are feeling this, Cazimi in like a really good way, hopefully. I mean, I'm thinking about how every single Leo season, you know, because your 9th house is the house of God and spirituality and belief system, every single Leo season, you have the sun in its domicile in Leo, but also in its favorite house, which is the 9th house. So like, it's a very powerful place to have the Cazimi, the Venus in Leo Cazimi as well. Like, I wonder if some Sag Rising is joining some sort of spiritual group or becoming a yoga teacher. Maybe there's a Sag Rising who's leaving a church, like leaving the church of Scientology, or I don't know, like maybe someone's leaving Mormonism or something along those lines. Like, there's some kind of reclamation of one's own relationship with God, and realizing that I think who am I to say, but I really do think any belief system that sort of perpetuates inner shame or punishes or scolds us for being human beings, it's just not right. It's like if you're gonna punish us for like the simplest of things, like having desires or whatever, you might as well punish us for drinking water. Like there are some things so innate to the human experience that it makes me feel like God is the force that celebrates every cell in our body, and God is the sort of influence that sees and loves us through all forms, right? So that for me is like that 9th house Cazimi. It's like, wow, like I'm so loved by the universe. I'm so at oneness. I'm in oneness with the universe. I'm really in love with my spiritual practice right now, or I'm feeling more connected than ever. So I'm kind of excited for the Sag Risings. It's possible that some Sag Risings are going on an important trip, a sort of journey to Mecca, if you will, a pilgrimage to Canterbury, a sort of religious pilgrimage of sorts. And that could be anything. I mean, you don't necessarily have to get on a plane to go on a pilgrimage. Like for me, going on a pilgrimage is sometimes like going to the Art Institute in Chicago or something, like it can be somewhere in the city that you're in. But I would say, yeah, doing some kind of pilgrimage, why that word keeps coming through, and what is a pilgrim? A pilgrim is someone who's like, pilgrims are colonizers, right? So, but in literal history, of course, so I'm not giving them a cookie or anything, but like the actual symbolism of a pilgrim is someone who's journeying to a faraway land in the name of God, right? So is there a high frequency of the pilgrim that we can express that doesn't have to do with colonizing others or getting others on our side of our belief systems, but is there just a way to feel really connected to our own sense of spirituality and our own relationship with God, right? So that for me is the Sag Risings. And one more thing with the Sag Risings, this juxtaposition between the mundane life and the spiritual life, I think there might be some tension there right now. With Jupiter and Uranus in the 6th house, it feels to me very much like I don't want to work. I don't want to like face the mundane. I just want to like be in the forest and be with the fairies and the mushrooms. And how do I reckon with the juxtaposition of mundane life and the divinity of who I am? Yeah, it's kind of a complicated feeling in some ways. Cap Rising, let's get to Cap Rising. So we've got the Cazimi happening in the 8th house of shared resources. I know a Capricorn Rising who, you know, I've known them for a long time, and I really value that they've let me peer into their journey and kind of see this happening with the astrology of it all. But they've I'm so happy for them, because for the past couple years since I've known them, they've been talking about new job or quitting their job that was really just kind of soul sucking, and recently they did it and they got a totally new job, and I'm so excited for them. And I think part of the reason they were able to do that, looking at the Cazimi approaching in their 8th house, is this feeling of security in the shared resources that they have. Like in the past year, they have bought a house with their partner, and I think their partner is super on board with them taking a little bit of a pay cut in order to be able to do this job. And you know, there's something there about the support of others helping us through. And Capricorn Risings may not be the best at asking for help or admitting that they need help. You know, I think Capricorn Risings may have a little bit of that independence, sort of that chip on their shoulder of like, I got to do it myself, or in order to get this right, I have to do it myself, which is very Cancer Capricorn axis. Like both the Cancer placements and the Capricorn placements, they just don't, they don't want to ask for help. They don't want to receive help. But there's something here about like divine receptivity. And the 8th house, the reason we sometimes correlate it with like sex is because I think what we're really getting at is like vulnerability and intimacy. And in order to receive, there's a level of vulnerability and intimacy that we have to have. And there's a level of trust we have to have. So perhaps for the Capricorn Risings, there has been a new level of trust unlocked with the universe, and that's allowed them to receive the help that they need, or put their ego aside so they are able to make the change that they need to make. But it's because they're accepting the support from those around them, which is very 8th house, you know, the shared resources of other people, right? Okay. Aquarius Rising, we have let me make sure I don't have any. Yeah, Aquarius Rising, we have the Cazimi, Venus Retrograde, and the Venus Cazimi in the 7th house of relationships. Okay, so very low-hanging fruit here, you know, new relationship forming, old relationship ending. You know, I think for the Aquarius Risings, especially with the square coming from the 4th house of the home from Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, I mean, this could be very much a move in together transit as much as it is a move out transit, right? Like it's sort of like I was living with you, but it just took me 1 year of being your roommate and to know that we are not meant to live together, and we are not meant to be together, and we are not meant to be in this relationship, right? Like that could be a realization that some of the Aquarius Risings are having with that Cazimi in the 7th house. On the other hand, though, there's something here about relationship to partnership in general. Not just the relationship to the physical partner, but like partnership. Like how do you view partnership? Is it something that you're open to? Is it something that feels super scary? Is it something that you have your guard up around? And it almost reminds me of like that one song by Demi Lovato. It's called Heart Attack. And I love some of the lyrics in her songs. They like really hit sometimes. And yeah, like one of the lyrics in that song is, if I fell in love, I'd have a heart attack, right? So there's something there about, for those of you who feel like maybe it's been a while since you've fallen in love, or maybe you had a really devastating breakup, let's say during the peak of the pandemic, and you know, this Cazimi in the seventh house could really be a rebirth moment for you, where you're suddenly now open to dating again, or you're open to partnership again, or you're now believing that that is something that you could have if you want it, okay? For some Aquarius risings, maybe the people that you're dating are changing. Like, maybe there's something about, like, your whole life you've been monogamous, and now you're starting to date in the polyamorous realm. Or maybe your whole life you've stuck to like heteronormative standards, but now you're claiming your queerness and now you're dating in the queer scene. Like, there could be something like that going on. So truly there's this rebirth in the place of partnership. And one more thing, Aquarius risings, if you do feel like you've had a long-term stable partnership, this doesn't necessarily have to be a bad omen, of course. It could be that your partner's life is changing in some way. Maybe your partner's getting a new job, or maybe you and your partner are having a baby or something. Like, there's something big that's changing the partnership. Maybe you have to move because your partner got a job across the country or something like that. And, you know, that's a story I could for sure see with this Venus Cazimi. Okay, Pisces Rising. All right, we've got the Venus Retrograde / Venus Cazimi going through the 6th house. And I was thinking about this, and sure, the 6th house can be like illness and struggles with our health and our doctors and healers. And it's not to say that we're going to fall ill, you know, during this Venus Cazimi. It's probably not that for most Pisces risings. But I'm actually thinking about our relationship to authority as a 6th house thing. And I guess technically it could be a 2nd house, 10th house, and 6th house thing, since those are kind of our work and money houses. But I think specifically the 6th house is our relationship to our authority. And maybe there's something about this Cazimi going through the 6th house where you're being noticed by your boss, or you're doing really good work at work, and you're finally getting the credit that you deserve, or you're feeling pretty appreciated at your job. And on the flip side, maybe there's something too going on where you're like, wow, this really doesn't do anything for me, this day job, and I don't feel appreciated, you know, or I don't feel recognized, which is a huge Leo theme, the theme of needing to be recognized for one's talents. So yeah, there's something there about, you know, our relationship to work, our relationship to the workplace, our relationship to the coworkers, and specifically our relationship to our boss, and who makes us feel like they're a worthy mentor who wants to see us grow, and who's a little bit more of like a sabotaging authority figure that is sort of a manifestation of a issue we have with like our mom or our dad or something, because that can very much happen, right? One time I had a client who told me like all of her bosses were like really really intense women who had a lot of like anger issues, and really had a lot of like outpourings of emotion. And, you know, I asked her about her relationship with her mom growing up, and she was like, oh yeah, like I was my mom's therapist. And I was like, all right, there we go. There we go. We can, not only do we manifest our parents in our relationships, but a lot of the times we also do it with our bosses, right? There was one more thing coming through. Maybe just busier. It could be good busy for the Pisces risings, but maybe there's a new job or a new gig or a bit of a change of career path that's leaving you feeling like you're busy. But hopefully the highest manifestation of this transit would be like, oh, this place in the workplace, this role in the workplace is really helping me express my talents, my gifts, or at least supports me as I, you know, do my talents and my gift stuff elsewhere, you know. Yeah, okay, friends. So that's Pisces rising. Aries rising, we've got the Cazimi going through the 5th house. So for some Aries risings, this is maybe a story about sexuality, gender identity, which I sometimes correlate with the 5th house. It's a story about maybe experimenting with queerness or just sexual preferences. That could be a very a big theme with the Venus retrograde and the Venus Cazimi in the 5th house. Yeah, there could be like a feeling of heightened like sex drive or like a heightened passion for your partner or partners, or a heightened sense of like, I want to explore or go on adventures, you know, whether those be sexual in nature or not. Now the 5th house isn't just about sex. It can be about our hobbies and our and what makes us unique and the things that we love. You know, it's the Leo house in a lot of ways, and it's Venus's favorite house. So I mean, if you're looking to increase your luck in 5th house things, having a baby, getting laid, drawing a masterpiece, getting your poem published, getting the solo act at the dance recital, like those are all 5th house stuff. Like I would say that the odds are on your side, my friends. Gambling, maybe Aries risings. I mean, like, I could see, I'm not trying to encourage gambling, but like whoever's winning the lottery next has this Venus Cazimi in their 5th house, okay? Like that's something that comes through. Because Venus can have its significations correlated with money and the material world, I'm thinking maybe there are some Aries risings out there who now are thinking like, how do I make my passion into a business? I recently had an Aries rising who's a sort of aspiring professional astrologer reach out to me and ask me like, hey, what are your tips for getting started as a professional astrologer? So I'm thinking with that Venus Cazimi in the 5th house and that square to Jupiter and Uranus in the 2nd house of money and resources, it's a little bit like, ooh, how do I make money for my passions? I could see an artist selling their paintings in a local shop, or I could see someone starting a business from the spark of their own passion. But it has to be something Leonian in nature, and something Leonian in nature is like, ooh, look at me, look what I'm good at. Aren't I so good at this thing? And it's not in a cocky way necessarily, but it's like, ooh, no, only I can give you this service, or only I can give you this product. So the more unique you make it, the more of an expression of you make it, the better, okay? I just did the Italian, the Italian hand in there. So, all right. Taurus Rising. Venus Cazimi in the 4th house. Yeah, you know, we sometimes think of the 8th house as the house of death and dying, but I do think sometimes 4th house stuff can signify loss or a change or an ending, just because the 4th house is sort of the darker place. It's where like it's where midnight happens, you know, it's the middle of the night, if you will. So, you know, there could be some grief in some ways that the Taurus risings are moving through right now, whether that has to do with like a physical loss or whether it has to do with saying goodbye to a past version of oneself, just because, you know, Jupiter's in Taurus in your 1st house and it's squaring this Venus retrograde in the 4th house. So there's something here about like, who am I? And it's a little bit like the Leo risings, only it's a little bit more shadowy, or like it gives me a feeling of more of a struggle of like, who am I? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to live? If there's Taurus risings listening who do want to explore new places of living, I would highly recommend doing that right now. I mean, I think the stars are on your side for maybe moving to a new city or moving to a new neighborhood, or if you know, Taurus risings, they tend to like be a little bit attached to the same old, because the same old makes them feel safe. But, you know, Tauruses do change when they're ready. So if you are feeling ready for a change, Taurus, I mean, this is a good time. Like, even if you've been living in the same apartment for like 10 years, like, I get you're comfortable, but what would happen if a new apartment invited in some fresh energy into your life? Like, that for me is something that comes through, like the new place of living, or even sprucing up what you already have, painting a wall, or getting a new bedspread, or using color therapy inside of the home might be something that feels really good. I believe like the feng shui experts say we should like rearrange, it's either 17 or 27 things in our home every single year, which I think is funny, like thinking about like moving 27 little things around the house, like moving your coffee maker to the other side of the counter, or like moving that candle to the other end table, like switching the pictures around. But low key, like there's something to it, right? If you're trying to call in change, rearrange your house, because you're shaking up the energy of your life in a significant way, okay? Yeah, some Taurus risings are selling their house right now. Some Taurus risings are buying their house right now. There might be a real estate theme within the Taurus risings. But I think it's all going to be good. Yeah, it's all good. And think back again to 2015, 2018, when it comes to the home and home life themes, and think back to how those themes may be evolving or relating to each other right now. Okay, Gemini Rising. We've got the Venus Cazimi happening in the 3rd house of the mind, squaring squaring Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus from the 12th house. So again, we were talking about plant medicine stuff with the Virgo risings, and I do feel like 3rd house, 12th house square also gives plant medicine, not necessarily a literal piece of guidance to do plant medicine, but just this idea symbolically of the thing that helps us move towards a realization or a therapeutic epiphany, or the thing that helps us unravel something from the mind, the thing that helps us realize a pattern. For the Gemini risings with that Cazimi in the 3rd house, it's the thought pattern, because that's what the third house is. It's like what we see on a daily basis. And yeah, we see our neighborhood on a daily basis. We see our home on a daily basis, but we also fundamentally live in here, inside of the mind, right? So we're always living in that arena too. And there's something here about the mind being rearranged. Like the Taurus risings are rearranging their literal house, and then the Gemini risings are rearranging like what is inside of their mind in a lot of ways, right? And no, I'm not telling you to get a limbotomy, but there's something here about like new thought patterns, new ways of seeing things. Yeah, like the other thing too with the third house, it can relate to siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. And I know that might be a little vague, but it is possible for some Gemini risings. Like, who knows, maybe you're going into business with your brother, or you're going on a trip with your cousin, or your cousin's getting married in a foreign country and you got to go to their wedding, or there's something big when it comes to the moving of the sort of external family. It's possible. The other thing with the third house is our neighborhood and our local community. And we could find, for the Gemini risings, you could find that your local community is expanding in some way. And there's something here about the relationship that you have with your neighbors, the relationship that you have with your community. Maybe some Gemini risings have really missed in-person events in the last couple years, and now they're rejoining neighborhood clubs or groups or meetups or whatever. So find a meetup, Gemini rising. Find that piece of local community that brings you joy. Have a backyard barbecue with your neighbors if you want, or like go to the block party. Cultivate that sense of community, because I think that's really going to be highlighted in this Cazimi. But at the same time, there's something internal going on when it comes to literally like changing the neuro pathways. Like if you tend to, in the past, if you've considered yourself a very anxious person or someone who really ruminates on a lot of things, like this moment is a bit of a change from that, where you may be finding medicine, both literally and figuratively, for some of these thought patterns and helping yourself move towards a different way of thinking. Yeah. Okay. We're finishing up with Cancer risings. Okay. Best for last. If you didn't know, I'm a Cancer rising. So what's funny is Margot Robbie is a Cancer rising, and she just starred as Barbie in the Barbie movie, right? That just came out. And I think that's so funny because, like, as we know, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've read reviews and I plan to go see it. But as we know, the Barbie movie is this like huge commentary on like feminism and a commentary on like the way we view women and socially and women's bodies and all of that stuff. And, you know, Margot Robbie as a Cancer rising has the Venus Cazimi going through the second house of money. So she's making bank off this movie, right? I mean, that's the literal manifestation. But then underlying it, the second house is also about worthiness, and it's about self-perception and how we exude our talents. And it's kind of funny because I feel like Barbie is sort of a second house kind of movie. Like it's a commentary on worthiness and societal pressures and conditionings as to what normal looks like, right? So there's something kind of second house-ish about that for Margot Robbie. For me as a Cancer rising, this for sure has to do with my business, which is a second house thing. My business being I'm a professional astrologer and tarot reader. And actually it's funny because in August 2019, I gave my very first professional astrology reading. Beginning of 2019, I started out as a professional tarot reader, and then as I studied more and more, I then opened my books up to astrology readings around that Cazimi in 2019 in my second house, so it's signifying like the new way of making money, but also the new way of identifying oneself to the world. And now, fast forward to 2023, I would say it's really nice to think like, oh, I'm still making money off of giving astrology readings. Like, that's great. Also, though, this fall, I'm experimenting with like a new facet of my business, which will be sort of like a writing creativity class in partnership with my friend and writing coach that hopefully y'all will hear about soon. But that for me is a very second house Cazimi moment, like the attempt to not necessarily rebrand, because fundamentally, I mean, I have the desire to be a professional astrologer and I love doing astrology readings, but there is a little bit of a rebrand on my end with the business side, maybe veering a little bit more towards creativity and writing. And that's actually a big part of me that I don't typically talk about that much, like the fact that I'm a writer. Like, I so much more often say I'm an astrologer than I'm a writer. So there's a new way of identifying in that second house kind of way coming through. So that being said, between the examples of me and my identical twin Margot Robbie, there's something for the Cancer risings going on with worthiness, literal financial stuff when it comes to our businesses, our the way we're organizing our money, the way we're making money, but also how we're viewing ourselves in the outside world, or how the outside world is viewing us, and how we are putting ourselves out there, right? So for Cancer risings, it's a great time to like update your headshot, update your website, try something new when it comes to your brand if you do have your own business. If you aren't necessarily an entrepreneur, how can you explore doing something different in the realm of like self-confidence or self-esteem? Like, what would feel good to help you move through any insecurities or challenges that you have with yourself? Like, would taking a dance class or a burlesque class or something like that help you strengthen your own self-perception? I'm thinking about all these fun things that we could do with the second house that don't necessarily have to do with making money, but very much maybe have to do with like our material relationship to the world, and even our relationship to the material body, we could even say, is a second house thing. Okay. Y'all, I'm looking forward to the Venus Cazimi again. It's August 13th, 2023, 7 a.m. Central or around that time. I hope these rising sign forecasts treated you well and gave you some ideas for how to frame this really important part of the astrology of 2023. Please comment down below if you resonated with any of these messages. If you're listening on the podcast and don't yet follow me on YouTube, please give me a subscribe on YouTube. And if you are new to my channel and you don't know how to book a session with me, know that everything is in the show notes, my website, all of my social medias, and all of that stuff. You can find me. So thanks so much for listening and watching, my friends. I so appreciate it. And have a wonderful Venus retrograde.